Well, I
Wow.
didn't work for it. It just came naturally. It's like a six-pack on. Well, I have to admit, when I was allowed to speak at Cannes Lions, I was fucking scared.
And we're live.
So, with this great last comment from Antoinette, let's start our coffee group in that sense. Welcome to the Gerety Awards. Welcome to this little panel, and we just decided we won't make this a panel, but really a round of women getting to know each other and talk about creative stuff that they love and that they were impressed by. So this is, I think, what you can expect today. I would like to introduce this very nice little group, and so I will start with Rowan Goweiny. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Perfect. Who is a copywriter and will soon be joining InOcean in Amsterdam. And she manages to balance her side projects with the professional projects very well. And so she's, for example, very passionate about the anti-racist social club, if I read this correctly, which is an initiative that she's working on. She also, I read that she calls herself a hodgepodge of contradiction due to her Oriental roots and liberal upbringing, which is based on the fact that she lived and worked in Cairo, where she was born. She was raised in Toronto, which is basically the very liberal part, and it all ended up in Berlin, where she is living now. And let me think. And also, she is still a copywriter with a career in the making and very talented and on her way to become the best creative director ever. Someone in this round told me. So welcome, Rowan.
Thank you. This is massive. I'm like, wow. Thank you.
Humility is not something that we practice in this round. So I learned that from Antoinette. Franka. Franka Mai is managing director and founder of the Goodwins. And that basically means that she knows how to say no very well, because she founded the Goodwins in 2018. And she was a DDB planner before, and she left the safe and networky environment to focus on work with the companies that actually do good. And so this makes her someone who has a really straight back to say no to all the companies that don't, which I love, and I want to hear more about it later on. Exactly. Then we have Nitzan Hoffmann, who is a music supervisor at Sizzer in Berlin. And Nitzan is also kind of related to Rowan because she is a Dutchie slash, and I hope I'm right here, Israeli. Is it Israeli or Syrian? Israeli.
Yes, Israeli, correct.
Stuck in Berlin. And when she is not touring the world with her band, she also produces music for advertising and supports other music talent with this, which is awesome. So she does actually something that she is very passionate about for a living. Antoinette Hose is an international strategy and transformation director and Gerety Awards ambassador. And she doesn't like to talk about business. in this round because she figured there's much more interesting things to talk about when there's a bunch of women coming together, which I love. So I think one of the things that stand out about Antoinette for me, because I've known her for quite a while, not in the way that we intended to do, but so this actually is the reason why we now get together in person. And Antoinette is one of the only women, or maybe the only woman I know, who says that she has no doubts about what she can do and about, she's always confident and she never doubts herself, which is amazing point, period. And when she's not rocking agencies, she's passionate about diversity and inclusion, which is also, she has several projects that she's focusing on. And this is strange or maybe surprising that she came this way, because she told me that 3 bosses told her not to focus on diversity and inclusion in her career, because why would she? Because she's so good in her job. So she shouldn't just focus on diversity and inclusion. She did anyways. And so she's a great ambassador, not only for the Gerety Awards, but also for women in general. And she's kicked my ass, definitely in the past weeks already. So I'm really happy to have all of you here in this little talk group. And so what I want to ask first, because it's kind of obvious in the sense, so you looked at so many creatives this week and last week. So maybe we can start with talking about which one of those, or if it's several, stood out for you the most in whatever form. Like, I would love to hear the reason why you loved a specific ad or communication strategy. And maybe we can kick off with Franka.
Sure, I'm happy to. And
cool.
I'd say let's start with the one that probably caused the most discussion among us. Like, it's one of the cases that we had some quite intense discussions about, and not necessarily, sorry, let me
no worries,
turn off distractions of any kind. Should have done it before. Not necessarily because anyone disagreed that this cause was important, but because of the role that media and journalism played within this case. So I'm going to give some background for viewers who haven't seen the case. And the case is called The New National Anthem. And it's by the Lebanese newspaper An-Nahar. I hope I pronounced this right. So go look at this case, the New National Anthem. It's a great case. And so just for some background, as I mentioned, it's in Lebanon, and Lebanon just recently plunged into their 6th revolution, which was news to me. So again, great learning curves with this entire judging process. And this newspaper, they were seeing that women could play such a crucial role within this revolution, and they wanted to give women a voice within this revolution. And so they made a very, I don't even know if it's a remarkable observation, but obviously no one seemed to notice up until this point, which was that in the Lebanese national anthem, women aren't even mentioned. There's a very specific line that reads, I think, something like the birthplace of men, and so on, but not of the women. So they figured this out, which is, I think, a great insight, which is just so, yeah, very obvious actually. And what they did, they actually took the anthem, they created a new version that just really added women in this line, so like the birthplace of men and women, and put it on the front cover of their newspaper and published this, and it went all over the nation, and it was in newsstands and kiosks and everywhere to be seen. This new national anthem that just gave women the equality of being mentioned in and represented on this national scale, which should be granted. And this kicked off a huge thing, because it was picked up by the revolutionaries on the streets, and they kept singing the new national anthem. This was actually the moment in the case when they gave me goosebumps, because they had these little snippets where you could hear the people singing this new changed verse. And that was really a goosebumps case. And in the end, the results, and I'm not sure how directly it is linked to this case, but I can see that there was something like culturally going on. It resulted in a 400 increase of women in their cabinet, which is, I think, just kudos and like a wonderful thing. So yeah, that was a great piece to see, like, with this very simple idea, how they could launch such a huge impact within their country. And no one doubted that in the jury sessions, but, and maybe someone wants to like chime in here, because what I hadn't even, like, watching this, I was just very, I was in awe of this case, but what I hadn't actually thought about was that it's a newspaper and it's journalism, and can they do that? Should they do that?
Yeah, I think
jump
that
in right here. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Rowan. You first.
Hi, sorry. So I wanted to jump in here because, of course, coming from a newspaper, and as we know, what is the motive coming from newspapers and what kind of narrative they're trying to push for. But what's really special about Nahar, a newspaper, which is it's a very famous newspaper in Lebanon. I mean, in the Middle East also, we kind of know it, but it's not like any newspaper because the founder was assassinated because he has very progressive thought. He was such an activist, vocal activist. And basically, Nahar is known to be kind of the pro-human rights newspaper that people kind of can't wait to like read all the time, because it's the only voice of the people, basically. And it's one of my favorite pieces as well, but not because, of course, like the idea, the simple like insight within the national anthem, but also because it was unfolded during the revolution. So the Nahar building is basically placed in the middle of this Martyr Square where people were already there protesting. And overnight, you had hundreds and thousands of people on the street. Overnight, the Nahar building, which is like one massive block in the center, having the whole like new national anthem on top, where people were just like wowed. So why this also, like, I really, really respect this piece is because you really saw it unfold. For the people who were at least following the events happening in Lebanon, it was pretty much there. You saw the piece, you saw the people singing it. It was unfolded in such a natural and organic way. And the CEO of Nahar is like obviously the daughter of the founder who passed away because of his activism, but also is a woman. So of course, coming from that angle, it was very much supported. And that's why, personally speaking, I did not mind it coming from Nahar, because if you know that what Nahar stands for, you know that it's basically a very, very progressive newspaper that has always been pro-human rights and pro-women rights. And again, like, the revolution was being led by the women after all. So having that happen while it was live, I think that was very special.
Yeah, I just let me jump in for a minute, because I was one of the people in our jury discussion who kind of, well, that was one of the main things for me when looking at it, being like, oh, yes, this is a good thing, but is it a good thing for a newspaper to do this? And actually, in the past few days, I've been having some friends who are journalists and who have been based in Beirut to kind of try and understand, like, what is the positioning of that newspaper specifically within the society there. And also to be then confronted with, well, yes, you have a point, but you cannot compare this to a German or a Dutch newspaper and the way that society is around that. If the NRC in the Netherlands or the Zeitung here in Germany would make a stand to change the national anthems of either the German ones or the Dutch ones that have references to brotherhood, to religion, where I'm like, okay, I don't feel very touched by that. But if any of those newspapers would make a stand for it, I would find that extremely odd and misplaced and maybe the wrong party to do it. Whereas I guess in Western Europe, yes, a political party could do it, or a humanistic organization. But then now, considering the position of that newspaper within the revolution actually there, and then understanding the background, the same rules don't apply. So I'm still, because it's like this intuition is really calling me like, no, but journalism should be kind of factual and not have an opinion and only give the facts. And I agree, this is a fantastic cause. So I think that's what actually makes it super, super interesting. Also that an agency teams up with a newspaper to do a campaign like that, which leads to change, is fantastic.
If I may jump in, I was squarely with Nitzan in the same camp. So I love the change it made, but I was very like, if this happens in the countries where I usually live, it would feel like Trumpism if it came from the wrong side, because this we all feel is the right side, but it might so easily some wave, some action like this might also come from a side that I don't politically favor. So that was one of my thoughts. And a second one, to be a devil's advocate, this being an award show and a jury, the results they claim, like the female ministers in cabinet and the anthem being directly linked, lovely, but I have some doubts there. What I did love is that they gave everybody an opportunity to chime in. So they merged high and low culture. They had a very popular singer sing it. So they really did everything to get everyone on board, not just the people that dare to go out in the streets every day, but also the people around it. So all in all, an amazing case. And I keep like Nitzan. I'm still. I have a hard time seeing it in Europe. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, and I guess in the end, it's the result for the newspaper. Commercially, it was a very smart stunt.
Sure.
And they sold more newspapers than ever, and they also wrote like this was the best-selling edition they ever had, which is, again, kind of good because we agree that the cause is the right thing. But yeah, I think it's also important there to then not forget that in a way part of the motivation is also publicity.
Sure.
Absolutely. And I oh, sorry.
No, please.
No, but I agree with also what Nitzan said earlier, that that same rules don't apply in terms of like, in Europe or the West, of course, like at the end of the day, it is strictly factual and you shouldn't be like, every entity has its job, kind of like you do that, the political parties do that, which I totally agree with. But what is very hard to kind of measure in that region, and in particular, is that they have a whole different playbook, and that's why I stay a bit. I don't even I can't even choose which side to follow, whether it's the good cause and the human right. Following the human rights cause, no matter where it is coming from, whether it's a stunt or at the end of the day having a real impact, or staying, true to like using the newspaper as another kind of how can I say it, supposed to be doing. So I don't know. I really I really truly I really agree with what Nitzan was saying, and also what Antoinette was saying is this two different motives and which which side to see it from, which lens to see it from, and I think it really depends on which side you look at it with.
Well, what came to my mind when you talked about this is that what we're seeing at the moment, especially maybe even advancing from the or coming up through the last 4 years of Trumpism and journalism having a totally different job from one day to the other, in a sense, is this kind of opinion piece growth. So there's a lot of journalism is separated into facts and information and reporting in the classic sense. But especially, so I regularly read New York Times, especially like in the past 4 years, and so there's more and more opinion pieces in the New York Times or CNN, for example, and then they're written by journalists as well as opinion leaders, even governmental members. So I guess in a way you could maybe even interpret this, let's say, campaign, without it being a campaign, as some really, really big cover opinion piece. They're not doing journalism in a way, maybe with this kind of piece, but they're pointing something out that should be changed, and then mentioning an opinion with that, or stating an opinion. But and I guess that's something, if you can separate this from the facts and information and stuff, then that's fine, I guess, for at least for me, if it comes from a newspaper. So, and one case that some of you mentioned was the sick kids case, and I stumbled across it, of course, myself, because I'm kind of personally connected to this whole story of chemotherapy and cancer, having gone through the same, but then having seen it from a perspective of a mother, is something that touched me in a way that even like my own chemotherapy couldn't. And how did you feel about this case when you watched it? What was the strong or the outstanding part of it that made it so impressive to watch? So to give a context, the sick kids ad, in a way, I don't want to call it ad because it's not kind of selling something, is called Moms versus Hard Days. And it's about, it's from the perspective of a mother, kind of from a mobile video selfie cam recorded. And it's basically following her through her days with her kids, with a focus on her son. And after a few scenes where you're like, okay, this is kind of about Corona and mom's having hard days, and she's like cleaning and doing the laundry and stuff, and then you notice she shaves the head of her son, and in the next scene you see her taking him to chemotherapy because obviously he has cancer. And then it gets very emotional about how she feels, how the highs and the lows that they go through, scenes where he seems to be lifeless, even not breathing, and she is devastated and she's screaming. And in the end, he made it through chemotherapy, and he turns out healthy and happy and enjoying life again, and she's enjoying life again because he can. And it's a very, very emotional story, but not in this classic advertising sense that we know emotional, that we see emotional stories. So I'm really curious what you felt when you saw this. And I think, Rowan, you put it on your favorites list. I think maybe you want to say something about it.
Yeah, I really love this piece. I mean, I'm not a mother, and I can't even imagine or put myself in the shoes of feeling that type of way. But I felt like it was really like it hit right in the heart, and it felt like it really delivered the feeling of either the mom struggling or dealing with her son, and even the emotions of the son through his mom's eyes. It was
Oh, I think you Rowan.
Rowan,
kind
we're
of like
losing
those
you.
homemade video style, which were not nothing pretty about it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we kind of lost you. Maybe, I don't know about your connection. Maybe you want to turn off your camera shortly, even though we'd love to see you, but if it makes it easier to speak.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Am I clear? Yeah. So I was just saying how much, I really, really loved the home video style, because it was not polished. It was very raw. It was very transmitting every bit of emotion. You were there in that house with them, struggling every day, every hour. And what I love about what Sick Kids has been doing, even the past 4 years with their first Sick Kids versus Undeniable, I think, it's shifted the narrative of cancer patients being victims of the disease, and rather warriors. And it was more about the strength and empowering them for who they are and what they fight every day. And I think they did the same thing for the moms here. It's not a sobby story about you crying, feeling sorry for the mom. If anything, I'm looking at the mom in awe and admiration, and I look at her as in such an empowering light, which is why it doesn't come off as like another cheesy, sobby crying campaign, but a very emotional and raw piece of film. So I think, yeah, definitely it was one of my favorites and high on top.
Yeah, I gotta agree. And I think what this piece, and maybe as a strategist, I'm trying to rationalize an insight into this, but what they did, they weren't trying to appeal to your pity for cancer sick children and please donate money to these poor children. I think what they did well was depict that this isn't just about the sick person. This affects everyone in their life. Their whole family has to change everything around helping this kid survive. And also, it's not just you get sick, you go to chemotherapy, and then it's done. It is taking so much time. You have to go in again and again, you get better and you get worse. And this wrecks people financially. And I think this is also what they didn't touch upon this directly, but you get a feeling of how much it impacts the life of a family. So you're feeling more willing to donate people to get through this very, very hard phase. And yeah, just the rawness, the authenticity, it made you feel like you were there. And I just didn't put it on my favorite list because I couldn't barely get through it. It was very, very well done, but almost too much to take for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's just very strong, and we're so used to people sharing videos from wherever, the beach, and look how fantastic my life is. And then, yeah, and it's not all that. And I think it's good to also show to people who are going through something like that it's all right to share. And to involve people. And the way that it was made was very much yes, here's a mother who's sending me her videos to let me know how her day is going, and with the family. And yeah, I absolutely agree. Very strong.
Okay, trying to be the killjoy on every case. Whilst I cried really hard with the film. For me, what I love about the narrative is indeed that it's about empowerment and not about pity. So that's amazing. I do feel that we're in a wave right now of these types of creatives. So as much as I love the cause and the filmmaking was really outstanding, this case does not stand of its own, but it belongs to a bigger body of work. And the thing it's selling is actually the thing that it's about, which makes it easy for them to talk about this. So I would like to quickly jump from this decidedly great case to Les Deux Frères for La Redoute. And La Redoute is a sort of, it's like the big house in Sweden where you can order all sorts of furniture. You can order those types of things with La Redoute as well. And I know that there were people in our jury that thought it was a sort of standard run-of-the-mill, here are the emotional buttons. But again, it really touched my heart. And you don't always have to have these huge things happen in your life to tap on an emotion. So just the oldest son going away from home to college served to have a great story and I found a story that sort of touched a raw nerve, but also sold items of the store in between. So it gave the brand and the store, to me, a very logical and easy way in, without it being cheesy, without it being cheap. So I'm wondering what others thought about La Redoute, either Les Deux Frères or the other film that was about, also very telling, a mother who gets a new boyfriend and then he moves in.
The films were good, but for me it was a bit on the cheesy side, possibly also because of the choice of music, which made it very kind of, yes, we're going to pull you through an emotional journey and we're going to be with you every step of the way. But I imagine that it works, and for the brand it is a good way of connecting with their audience, and it's nice to see, just like overall, as you say, that this is maybe all part of like a hype, or like something that is happening, where it's like showing these stories that are not the ordinary, which is most people's lives, and that is a good thing to see, I think, in campaigns.
Now that you say it, that you had a slightly different feeling about it, was there a case where you really like almost got into a fist fight about, like, was there a case where you had totally different opinions or standpoints culturally or in the context of the case?
I don't remember if there were any fights per se, or did anybody raise their voice? No, I don't think so. No, I don't know. Like I like one of the cases that I very much liked, that I had the impression that didn't really resonate with others, was the Reddit 5-second Super Bowl ad, just because it was kind of against everything else, which is cool. Like
maybe explain the frame of the ad and what happened there.
Yeah, so, well, a lot of people, or some people might know, Reddit is, can you call it this? It's not really social media, it's a message board where people can communicate about whichever topic they want to communicate about. And it's also, I guess, one of the dark places of the internet, because there are many discussions about anything. And one of the discussions that had been happening on Reddit this year was about the stocks. And there was this group that started shorting GameStop, which made, well, pretty much caused a crash, because nobody was expecting this. The markets were going up and down, like suddenly there was chaos. And this all started on a message board on Reddit. And apparently, and I read up about it a bit more yesterday, and I think that's super cool, that Reddit, which is not a company that does big advertising, they don't have a big advertising campaign. Also, the platform doesn't really have this kind of monetizing system. So they decided to just blow their entire media budget on a 5-second Super Bowl ad. And the only thing they said was like, well, if you see this, then our bet paid off. Like, there was a little explanation. And just in between, in that moment where like 180 million eyeballs in the US are focused on this block of commercials, I think by now it's, I don't know, it's millions of dollars for every second that you pay. And they had this still that was kind of crackling a little bit. People thought their TV was broken. People didn't understand what was happening, but they made, as a smaller company, this kind of statement of like, yes, we're going to play with the big boys now. And even if you will never hear from us again, or you're never heard from us before, but this is our kind of moment to grab everybody's attention. And I just thought that was very cleverly done in a very cool way. It is a very cool company. The CEO stepped down recently because he said, I think that this company should have a black CEO, and he made the decision to take a step back to allow for the board to find somebody else. And yeah, and like I got very excited about the whole kind of background, what was happening, how people are grabbing their moment and fighting the big boys.
But what were the voices against it, I wonder?
My voice was not so much against it, because I also like that they have an immediate call to action. You have 5 seconds, but you're always on your phone. So you can immediately go to Reddit and see what it's all about, even if they didn't explain what they are all about. So I wasn't against it, but it just didn't land in my top 5 because there was actually quite a lot of good work.
Which one did you like best, Antoinette? Or which moved you most?
I think I'll go with fast food, and I'll go with Wendy. Because I used to be a gamer a long time ago, and Wendy's, the burger joint, in the past year, did this amazing thing where they sort of throughout, well, a year and a half or 2 years, they made Wendy a character in more than one game. So she landed in Fortnite, but they also created their own Mario 2 levels. They sort of did it in a way that no brand has done it before. Because they were fun with it. They actually really were in the culture, and they created culture, and people started to jump in. And this is not a one-off campaign, but it's sort of a concerted effort to sort of put Wendy squarely into that very big demographic that games and that spends a lot of money on fast food. And so as always, I love that it also works. It's sort of, I love the idea. I love the over 50 executions on one same idea. And then the fact that it actually drives people to buy more Wendy's, to me, that was from.
It seems to be really built on the inside, or on an insight of the connection between the two industries in a way. And as a strategist, I often see clients, big, small, whatever industry they're in, they're really still avoiding the gaming industry because, like, a lot of them, they don't actually know how to talk to gamers, what's important to them, how they could connect their own brand with this whole culture, and it's very.
Yeah, but what they did so smartly is that they've seen that there's not one type of gamer. There's the Fortnite gamer, there's the Mario people, and sort of, this is why it's so amazing. So for me, the insight is not around, funnily enough, connecting fast food and gaming, even if that might work if you retrofit. It's more around, I'm going to play a role. If I would say I'm going to play a role in music with my brand, then I would, I could pick one music style, or I could pick to be a player in various music styles and do so. The cool thing about this is how broad the campaign and how broad the thing is. And I think the insight is that in gaming, you need to be true to the game you're playing in, and they managed to do that.
Yes, I think that gaming still for a lot of advertisers is underestimated, and I still get kind of frowns if you talk about gamers and they're like, yeah, but there's 15-year-old boys. I'm like, no, it is a culture. It is a cultural phenomenon, not only, but it's a very big part of our culture today, and so it makes for a very strong case, and yeah, I really love that.
I just have a question for Franka, because I saw her looking. Did you, with the Goodwins, ever think of jumping into gaming?
Or fast food?
Or one of your clients, fast food?
Actually, neither, no, not to this point. Well, gaming, obviously, like if it would make sense for one of our clients to like create a strong connection there, for sure. Because I absolutely agree. It's not just a huge part of society. It's a huge part of the population that is like in one or the other gaming universe. So And I just, yeah, what I loved about the Wendy case is they detoured around all the other fast food brands, right? Like battling on TV, and they just took their completely own route and made it their own. So, but yeah, nice impulse.
I have to admit I was jealous. Having worked on McDonald's very long, I'm sort of like, wish I had done that.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say, you know, it's still a very industry stereotype oftentimes, and connecting to industries in that way, and or connecting with a certain culture that is very strong, it still seems to be like an underdog thing to do for the really big advertisers.
So we always turn to hip hop if we think we need to connect to culture.
Yes, sure.
There were many hip hop cases. Well, not many, but there were a couple. I was like, okay, this is still a thing, like cooperating with a hip hop artist, and
yeah, crazy. There's always this category, the ones who got away, in a sense. Are there any communication pieces that you loved that got away and that will maybe never see like a broader audience, that you would have loved to win even, or to make more public? Rowan, did you see something that was maybe a bit under the radar?
I think we had very similar, I would say, taste in the ones that we kind of all either agreed on or had discussions around. But I feel like there's a lot of things that kind of, I don't want to say went unnoticed, but kind of we didn't talk about much, especially in the like some spots like TVC and until like all these like crazy cool creative cases. But I really liked No Drama for the Swiss tourism. I loved it. Like it was just like it felt fresh to see like like not even traditional advertising, but just like a spot on TV that is super insightful. I mean, I love it when brands or like clients, like as in like taking Switzerland in this case, that acknowledges and owns who they are. So it's like, you know, it's like, yeah, we're like, let's say, yeah, too perfect, too pretty, too boring for the adventurous, let's say, or whatever. But that's who we are. And like, you know, and just saying it as it's like, okay, we're the land of no drama. And I love that line. If you want drama, that's not where you want to go. And then of course the like having De Niro kind of, you know, like the king of drama, portraying that kind of parallel side and then going for Hanks instead. I thought that was super smart at the end. I thought that was very funny. It was very humorous, very not pushy, and I just loved it. I love the owning of the like Switzerland as like the Swiss tourism association owning who they are and basically positioning themselves as that. And it was really nice. I really, really liked it.
Yeah, I think indeed, like got away. We shortly discussed Not for Lease, which is a really nice, very small campaign by a local community. And during COVID, everybody knew that you had to shop locally, but almost no one did. Possibly because we're all afraid of visiting more shops or stores and having more points of contact and more danger, could be. So they, in one borough I forgot the city, which is horrible, or the town.
Toronto!
Our local Torontian, I'm so sorry. So they put up brown paper, just ordinary brown paper, printed with for lease on, let's say, a lot of the loved neighborhood stores. And then after that came the reveal that, you know, if you're not starting to shop there, these stores will actually be for lease, up for lease. So I think because it's so small, it will not make everyone's cut if you have to pick 3 or 4. But I thought that's the one that got away.
Yeah, it's also the reality of thousands and thousands of people around the world who have like a small business, something that they're passionate about, and COVID, of course, was a very big impact for them. Rowan, while you said you loved the humor of the no drama ad, I was wondering if you guys feel that they're like, especially in the last 1.5 years since this whole thing started, that humor and advertising is something that we see less. Are people more cautious to put it in, like to develop humorous ads? What do you feel about that?
I think they are. I know of one campaign that I was working on actually just before the pandemic started for a German company that ended up being killed because it was kind of this humorous film about everything going wrong. And March or April of last year was not the time to release that. And then it just got shelved and it went away. So I do think that probably with a lot of companies and brands, they felt like, okay, maybe we need to be a little bit careful right now.
Yeah. Yeah, advertisers were really on the edge of what can we say? Should we communicate now? Can we? Should we not? How to handle the situation is like really in a shock phase. Although, you know, when I think about how many bad times we've made it through only with humor, and with having a good laugh about even the worst things. So, but of course, it is being an ad is something different than having a laugh with your friends or your families, even in bad times. So, yeah, it's kind of I get Rowan's excitement about this ad because it's kind of something so refreshing and so light and so self-ironic, yeah, I just really hope that we see more humor in future again.
Yeah, and the thing is with humor.
Do you maybe want to switch off your Rowan?
Something very. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, just.
I'm sorry, Rowan, you're not getting.
On that note of humor, I feel like the perception of this
No.
Rowan, you need to mute, sorry, and you need to buffer.
While Rowan buffers.
Not working. But I think on the humor part, we did discuss another case, but the humor cut was smallest. There were only 4 cases in it. And we discussed the film on, I think, Fanta, but I don't have a lot to say about that, but maybe someone else.
Yeah, and the Netflix and Ben & Jerry's, the punchline, and I actually really liked that one because their campaign also started by making fun of all the various very serious advertising in the beginning of the pandemic and kind of moving through it very quickly because we've already all seen these films where they edited the different commercials that had the same music and the same supers and like the same piano kind of this. So, and the way that they kind of turned that around to create a campaign that also pushes their own content because their own comedians were in it. And to just give a little bit of context, so there was a campaign, Ben & Jerry's and Netflix. They created this hotline that people could call. When people called the hotline, they would get jokes by these comedians that have their own show on Netflix, and they could get the Ben & Jerry's punchline ice cream. So it felt like a very funny kind of combination of those different factors. The jokes maybe weren't the strongest. Perhaps that's also just because of this period that we've all been in and what we just discussed. I wasn't really impressed with those, but the idea is nice to do something light. And they had like 125,000 people actually calling that hotline and then pressing to hear the different jokes. And yeah, so I'm very happy that there are still companies that do that. And I think Ben & Jerry's is a great company to do that.
I do agree. I really like that one too, bringing some lightheartedness in the year of the pandemic. And I think it's just a great fit. But Netflix and Ben and Jerry's teaming up, the one delivering the jokes and Ben and Jerry's delivering ice cream to your door is just a match made in heaven to get through the pandemic. And I agree. Maybe there's also a cultural element to it. I think you have to like the type of comedians they chose, like Fortune Feimster. It's probably not for everyone, but yeah, I think also they had these hotlines you could call actual hotlines. Who does that anymore? To have people tell you jokes, which is, I think, just a lovely little idea. So yeah, great case.
Yeah, who still remembers the time where you could call a number and it would tell you the time?
I worked at the call center where people would call me to ask for the time. And I always thought it was this Dutch magazine. I'm like, you're looking for the tijd, this magazine. No. Could you please tell me what time it is? Okay.
There were actually
Doesn't
people
exist
who did this the whole day.
Oh, I remember I only worked there for 6 or 7 weeks, but I received those phone calls.
That's crazy. That's really crazy. So
I think one of the things, Nina, about this year, which was weird, or maybe it's just usually I love the innovation cases because we had humor and entertainment and we had a slice through. But this year's innovation cases were all a tad sad. I don't know.
In what way?
They weren't huge. They didn't bowl us over. There was one small idea, which was about how do you take the most CO2 friendly route somewhere. So that was sort of an app that sort of then tells you, even if you go by car, it's not the fastest and it's not the shortest, but it's the most CO2 friendly one, which is a small but fun idea, okay-ish even, but I think nobody will download an app to actually get that. So that route should be in your Google Maps or in your TomTom or whatever. And the other ideas were so much on the technical side that they sort of ventured wide outside of advertising. But I don't know if anyone else, I was amazed. I thought people are at home all day. Why are there no more innovation cases? What else do we have to do than to think of smart stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Or what kind of smart stuff were people thinking and developing on instead, yeah, but do you have like a feeling for how, like, why this could be? Do you think this has something to do with the past year and that the focus went somewhere else?
I know that for a lot of agencies, budgets went somewhere else. Sending in for awards. No, I don't, but not a societal or an economic or an insight about why that innovation should be lagging.
But you could be right that budgets went more into something safe than into something innovative, especially in times where it's still kind of uncertain how people react to something. Yeah.
Well, that's maybe something nice to say about last year. And they were not, but they were not entered, but there were a couple of commercials out there that were sort of cut from existing materials, and quite amazing things were to be had, but we didn't have them in our jury, so we're not allowed to discuss them.
All right. Yeah, I guess it was a very interesting year last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, people tend to get creative, really. I'm really excited about what you will tell us about communication next year, when this phase is everyone's like, waiting, anticipating, or even going out already. And it does a lot with our psyche and our emotions. And I'm really curious about how advertising will change in the next year, when we kind of feel like this could really be the New Year's Eve that we can, make a cut and start off new. We thought it would be last year, but then on January 1st, everything was the same, I guess. So
I think Franka is best positioned to answer that. because
Oh,
she's
yes.
with clients that want to blow shit up like me or want to do the things differently.
Exactly. You're the center of attention and creativity with what the topics that you have to do with every day. I guess everything having to do with doing good, getting better, more sustainable, more mindful, more diverse, more inclusive is just a massive, massive, massive part of our culture and public discussion at the moment. So yeah, tell us about your work every day. How has the last year or 1.5 changed what you do?
Well, maybe one thing first of all, because what we feared last year with the pandemic hitting was, for example, that this entire doing better, doing good, sustainability, and everything we need to do collectively to bring nudge our world to a better place. We were really afraid that this would just completely be forgotten about because the pandemic was like all encompassing and we all were like focusing our capacities on dealing with that. And just happy to see that that did not happen at all, that there's that of course it didn't make the news as much as the pandemic, but it's still going strong, and we still see brands like really turning to this topic and taking it more seriously, because what we've seen in the recent years was there's like lots of greenwashing and 2030, 2050 visions and how we're going to change, and like no real action behind it. And I think many companies have realized that this isn't cutting it anymore, and that customers are really holding them responsible, pointing it out. I think we've just recently had, these last couple of days, I think BMW was pointed out for their gay rights strategy that is working in a couple of markets, but then again, they just don't activate it in other markets where gay rights are not socially acceptable, which is, of course, people are going to pick up on this and they are going to confront you about it. And this is great to see that this is gaining more momentum. And yeah, we feel there's still going to be so much work, and we're here for it. We're happy to do this work.
That's great. I mean, I was following as much as you do, pretty much in the past months, the whole Oatly campaigning that was going on with the European Union deciding on if milk alternatives and meat alternatives could use specific terms that are usually originated in the actual meat and milk industry, going against or campaigning against an article, 171, that would have then prohibited the use of these words. And I found it astonishing and really, even though it's like such a mass market and hype around Oatly at the moment, and they're kind of the Apple in a way of the milk industry, just like disrupting things that everyone said were impossible, and they just did it, and they do it with a sense of humor and a rebellious spirit that Ben & Jerry's is kind of very related to that, I guess. But still, it's just fascinating to see what they can move coming from and then they don't even hide the fact that they want to sell products and that they want to go mass market, and that of course they want to earn money with that, and that's fine. So I guess you would be the perfect person to know and also to spread this truth that you don't have to be all charity in order to do good and change the world for the better.
That's maybe a nice bridge to the Gerety Awards, because the question we had in our jury was, are all the cases going to be about do good, diversity, sickness, and not a lot of health, or maybe health? Or are the Gerety Awards actually an award like all others, but just with a specific gaze, namely people identifying as females being in the jury? So
what's your perspective on that? I mean, I wasn't part of the jury, so it's really something that is, was going on amongst the bunch of you. So what's your perspectives on that? Rowan, would you like to try maybe switch off your camera in order to make it a smooth one this time?
Am I heard? Still? Hello?
Yeah, please. I mean, maybe you switch off. Yeah, exactly.
Is that better?
Yeah, we hope so. Yes.
Okay, cool. I don't know what's wrong now at this time. I think a fine line in between, like mixing, of course, like do good, be good, but also still giving a tribute to good creative. It's not either, like, I don't think it's either that or that. I think we can definitely blend both worlds into one, into making good creative, clever creative, while also still being good and doing good. Like, I also wanted to mention that a bit earlier in terms of like humor. Back then, or back into traditional advertising, humor was always based on like stereotypes or like bad jokes or whatever, which is no longer accepted in the in today's world. People call out on that. People are sensitive. People are vocal. The internet is gonna come after you, and I think us creatives sometimes we can't think that we don't think that there's one without the other, whereas I would like to at least aspire to have good creative work coming from both sides, and we don't have to be we don't have to be super like promoting, let's say, false ideas and false like old school ideas that worked back then in today's world. But I think everyone's being creative in more ways than we can imagine, so I think merging both worlds is the future to go to.
And I think this it's going to go for all of the awards, for all of the award shows. Just for the Gerety Award, my perspective is, and because I connected with this insight that the Gerety Awards is founded on, that female consumers make up for 50% of the consumers out there, and even more, they make up for, I think it was up to 60-70% of consumption decisions out there, because they run households and so on. So it's weird that the advertising targeting these like equally male and female customers is going to be judged by mostly men. I think it's impossible to judge if it's properly talking to these customers. So therefore, first of all, I think, it's important to make the industry aware of that, and to bring more women into all of the juries to be able to judge whether a creative is properly reaching the target audiences. But also for the Gerety Awards, it should mean that to judge just normal advertising that is also entered into all of the other award shows. Otherwise, it's like not comparable. Why should we as women only judge the nice, fluffy impact and purpose stuff? That's also, I think that's not the point of this award. Yeah.
You have to excuse me, Antoinette, maybe you can take over shortly. This is the joy of working from home, is getting mail delivery.
That's okay. We're getting kicked out anyway. Nitzan, do you have a thought on sort of like the Gerety Awards now has a jury with only people identifying as women for a certain reason? Mm-hmm. Should they focus on trying, because the Gerety Awards, as I know from Lucia, focus on getting just the same work in. So will we then be needed for how many years, do you think?
Well, isn't that what is often true for initiatives that are trying to make a change, that once the change is made, they become unneeded? So once we get the point that it is actually, like the jury reflects society, then maybe it's not needed. But until then, and I think we're still quite a far away from that. If you look at the numbers of like what the percentages of the juries are in other award shows, then it's fantastic. For me, this was the first time. There were some campaigns that I've seen that popped up in other award shows where it was too bad that we didn't see that in the Gerety Awards. So it still feels like, yes, there are also certain campaigns that are being sent in perhaps to the Gerety Awards, I don't know if it's because of the jury, or because it feels maybe that it is some kind of genre also that will be discussed there. But I think it should be a reflection of society and all the markets, both on the jury side and on the content side.
But I wonder, I mean, we still have, you know, for years and decades, nobody ever, you know, asked about all male juries, for example. So maybe even if we somehow reach equality or diversity in that, and that's of course not only based on gender, but it's also based on ethnicity and age and so many other factors. So it probably will take a very long time, but I feel like if this is a round of people that, you know, together they share similarities that you wouldn't share with another gender, for example, why wouldn't you still have events or juries that take a certain perspective, or that and I don't want to say there is a certain female perspective on it, because I don't believe in that. But why shouldn't it, you know, still have award shows like the Gerety Awards?
I have a very funny dream now. I sort of in 30 years time in Cannes, we will have one very weird jury that's only for white cisgendered guys who are no longer actually represented anywhere. And who can judge the same work. So yeah, I think that's a good dream to leave everyone with. But yeah, what I love about the Gerety Awards is two things. It's also bringing us together, because all these women are meeting, and I would love to see all the international juries together physically at one time. Would be amazing. We are still way too white, because white middle-class women profit first, especially in countries that are predominantly white or half white. So that's shitty, but it's what's happening. And the other thing is that what I loved about our jury, funnily enough, was that we didn't have to fight to get 3 cases to win. And we were doing it on Zoom. So actually also more introverted people got their shit in, which in a lot of juries also doesn't always happen if it's the gorilla behavior that sort of takes center stage.
Yeah, what's the one thing for the others that you loved about the Gerety Awards juries and the work that you did there? Nitzan.
Yeah, I don't know, like for me, and I'm quite new to the industry, so like also just the amount of content coming at me on Monday was quite impressive. And I really noticed that in the days afterwards, like there were most of the campaigns I had never heard of or seen before, and especially like the very specific ones. The one about Lebanon, this hackathon thing in Czech Republic. And so in a way, like it was, first of all, fantastic to meet all these amazing people and see work that I would never be introduced to. And then to really get excited about these other ideas that are coming also from people with a different background, people living in a different part of the world, but also under such different circumstances, that it was exciting, but also very challenging. I noticed in the days afterwards, just kind of all of these different campaigns going through my head, where it's like to understand them, you also need to put in an effort, which I loved. It's been a very even educational experience to just be introduced to all of this. It's fantastic.
Franka.
Well, I would agree with all of this. I love just seeing the side by side of different cultural contexts and like on the same topic, like motherhood or being a parent. There were like pieces in there with a very traditional depiction of motherhood, and I was almost cringing. And then we had a couple of more, let's say, woke and evolved depictions of mothers and families, and you could just feel like how the world is really still in different places on these topics, and how much we still have to do, all of us together. And that's just, yeah, I loved to take time out of our very busy like careers and days to look at this and to reflect on this, and to, most of all, yeah, listen to this. I loved the jury. It was a very cool jury, and to listen to all of these fantastic and smart women reflect on this, it really, yeah, opens your perspective.
Rowan, what was your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more as well. It was super fun and exciting, and as well, it's my first jury, so also being, no, why is this against me? Sorry, but anyway, so yeah, even that, I was like really excited to just find the time to have that conversation. So I hope it doesn't cut. But yeah, for me, it was very interesting to see, like, although we were, let's say, pretty diverse, for as much as diverse as we would like to be, and of course we aspire to be much more in the future, but even within that group, we were like different experiences, different backgrounds, different age groups, and we had different lenses. And I think I learned a lot just by hearing all the other women giving their 2 cents about every piece. And like Nitzan as well, I kind of went around and Googled some more, had many conversations regarding some of the thoughts, some pieces I liked initially, and then after speaking and discussing them, I had different, like, it altered some of my thinking, which I thought was pretty cool, and it keeps the conversation and going. So it's just it was very, very cool. I enjoyed it a lot, and I really loved the group.
I think I think that's a really cool point to end, and I hope that you can all, no matter how much jury experience you gather in the next years, that you can always find this angle of really wanting to learn something from it, and really wanting to take something with you from every single jury work that you do, instead of just judging things and then drinking rosé at some beach. Yeah, and I really hope to see you again at some point. It was really lovely to meeting you guys. Please have a really, really cool weekend. Thanks for inviting us to talk to each other, Gerety Awards, and yeah, talk to you soon, hopefully. Have a great weekend, everyone.